From undisclosed locations for reasons of security and insecurity, we present to you the MnRTV Live Show. And tonight, we're going to be having a special guest, Richard Smoley, how God became God. And Richard Smoley, who is he? He does occult teachings and spirituality and religion. He's a man of much information. He's going to be coming on tonight at 8:15, but without further ado, I want to introduce to you the man of the hour, the man of the power, the man who never goes sour, Mario. Welcome to the MnRTV Live Show, the co-host.
Yes, yes, it's great to be here because this is where I want to be with you, everybody out there on the great planet Earth of ours, where millions of viewers get to see us all the time. That's where I want to be, if you know what I mean.
Yes, because this is a worldwide transmission here, and this show has been brought to you by the Montreal Anti-Illuminati Task Force in collaborations with intruders worldwide, everywhere. And we are here to expose and decommission the New World Order and expose the 13 bloodlines and everything in between. Aliens and George Soros and the Rothschilds. Go ahead.
Yeah, aliens, Nephilims, hate man, right? Everything. We're there. We're trying to be on the ball. You know,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
We just learned new information that we're going to be studying for a new show about a type of weapon that they can use against you, making you think things that do not exist. This information, we just started studying it today. You did get the information I sent to you, but what I'm going to be talking about is tonight because we need to really research this, and we have no time tonight because we had the show. But that's what we love, getting information a day on the same day that we're doing a show, but we have to delve more into it because once we get started, no one can stop us, and that's what we're here for. So Mr. Soros, Mr. Rothschild, Mr. Rockefeller, enjoy the show.
All right, so we're going to do what we normally do. This is me. This is Mario. I'm going to be switching on over to show you what you need to know. First is, of course, the intro. Then it's the pictures of the week. Then it's the news. And then we get straight into the topic, which is roughly in half an hour from now. So let me commence. Let's do this. Let's get it done. All right. So here she is. Our wonderful blog, and it's MnR Productions, Mariolaur.blogspot.ca. And if you just scroll down, you see our wonderful city, Montreal, and we just keep going and going and going because we started in 2016. And if you don't see us, refresh and then hit play, and you'll see us live. And when it gets recorded, you will see it recorded. And here, this is where you can ask the guest all the questions, or us, and whatever anybody is out there talking. Hi there, Leland, and everybody else out there. You know, you can get involved. It's always great. So now we're going to be getting into the pictures of the week that is posted on both the Conspiracy Talk on Google Plus and on Facebook.
Freemasons are evil. Freemasons are so secret, one Mason doesn't know what the other does. I wonder if it's to that point. I really wonder, though. I'm not a Freemason, so I wouldn't know, but probably people that are or deep research Freemasons probably know about it.
Thing is who could we ask, and can we trust anybody to give us the right answer? That's the question there, Robert.
Exactly.
Anybody out there that can give us the right answer?
Exactly. For sure. Well, okay.
So we've on the next one with the Freemasons.
Masons are evil. My grandpa was one, and he was a good man. My Masons aren't evil. My grandpa was one, and he was a good man. Most Masons are low levels, ignorant about things of importance. Exactly. The Freemasons that we know, they say they were full of BS and everything, but the thing is, they're low. They're not at the high levels, you know. So just because they're the low levels, they think they know everything, but they don't. As usual.
So this answers the first picture, right?
Yes, this answers the first picture right there.
So if you ever wonder about our thoughts on Freemasons, this is it. And if you look, you see there's a ladder. You got to climb up the ladder. The higher you go, the more things you got to do, right?
Exactly.
Suivant next. Now this is everybody's day's life. When
Life.
you're born here, life as a child, then you go to school, then you walk your way to work, then you make a family, and then you wind up going to the grave. You
And
see what it says here?
what is it? Unexpected system
This
error.
error. And you see this there, Robert?
And look,
This,
and this like an illusion.
yeah, but this is how our lives have been fabricated. But this here, right here, you see a gentleman right there?
Yeah.
He's running. That would be us. We won out of the rat race.
Exactly.
Right there. You see him. And look. They're spotting on him. See, this individual right there is watching the MnRTV Live Show right now and wants to be away from this system.
Very interesting. Exactly. We were trying to run away from it, but it seems like where we're running, we always go back to the work. And then we get out, we try and run out, and we're all sucked back in because of the money system.
But anyhow, it's always good to know. Suivant next.
Right here, right there, and it's Mexico stopped sending America drugs. The gringos wouldn't tear down Trump's wall on their own. The gringos would tear down Trump's wall on their own. Cocaine is American coffee. It's all about money.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Money. All right. Suivant next.
Most people I know, sheep. Well, no, sheep's in wolf's clothing. Is that it?
That's exactly it. And we know that a lot of people are like that, and that's why we got to be extra careful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because a picture's worth a million words. All right, suivant next. Now this one applies to.
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. So what's better, uninformed or misinformed? I think uninformed is better than misinformed, because misinformed, you get everything wrong. Uninformed, you don't know what's going on. So it's better not to know fake news than to know nothing.
What's best there, Robert, is if everybody watches the MnRTV Live Show and gets the facts right.
Exactly, for sure. The sheep out there that don't know what the Rothschilds are doing, controlled media puppets. Okay.
Because we try and investigate everything and bring out there, like this one next, suivant next.
Sasha fears. Sasha has a Swahili meaning. And many Central and Eastern African cultures, a Sasha is the spirit of someone who's no longer living, but is known by someone who's currently alive. In other words, a Sasha spirit is known as the living dead. Let the last sentence sink in a bit. Yeah, but I know some girls that are called Sasha.
Yeah, but hold on there, Robert. The reason why this picture has been up here is because of a Super Bowl. Apparently, this one performed at a Super Bowl. That's what it's getting to. Not every Sasha out there, but this specific Sasha.
Okay, Sasha. I don't know who she is. Never heard of her.
Me neither, because we don't watch Top 40. We don't listen to the Top 40 music. But that's what she is. She's Top 40, American Top 40, Bowen music. All right, suivant next.
Signs you may be brainwashed by the corporate media. You support candidates based only if they're Democrat or Republican. You take mainstream news as fact and never question or verify their claims. You don't know or care the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. You think Edward Snowden's a traitor. You think marijuana should remain illegal because it's harmful. You don't know the U.S. debt is in debt or how much the national debt is. You think all counterfeit information is fake news and dismiss it. If more than 3 of these apply to you, please seek help from the person who posted it to get you informed, concerned, your fellow citizen. Yeah, we should be getting a few people asking us soon, eh?
Yeah, but all they have to do is just keep watching our old shows, and we always discuss every single one of them with someone, either our guest or our topics or in the news. we always discuss all of these, you know, and I think we have something on Edward Snowden later on, or we had him last week. We's always on all these topics we always talk about on the MnRTV Live Show. All right, now, suivant, next, this one.
The map of the country, according to every country, the map of the world, according to who every country thinks is most dangerous. Yeah. Look at that.
Look at where we are.
Yeah, and look, but our country, where we are, North America, yeah. Everywhere else, it's one certain country.
So the Americans, they don't own even the United States of America.
I know.
Look at that. Look who really owns the United States of America. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. It's not something very good. I can imagine that.
But anyhow, suivant, next.
The truth is no longer hidden. Now people are hiding from the truth. Yeah, sometimes I just want to run away from the truth and just hide and not come back. It's too
that's highly impossible for you to do there, Robert. Once you know the truth, you don't want to go back, you know?
No, I just want to forget the whole thing and just pretend it never happened.
You can't, because you know too much.
Exactly, and we do have people like looking out for us, you know, so yeah, exactly.
All right, suivant, next. So yeah, again about cheapos, you know?
They love their change. They forget all about who they really are. And if you try to remind them, they hate you for it. They feel like you're trying to steal their most precious possession. Exactly. They don't like to hear the truth.
No, they just like to live their own lives and be part of the rat race. And then they turn to this evil person for answers. Look at this.
Who the heck is that? Is that Satan? Looks like
that's
Satan.
the Pope.
I know. Looks like Satan. Looks like Satan to me.
But Satan is
right below.
Yes.
Right there.
The shadow.
Yeah. Oh God.
That's what you're supposed to see. You know. All right. Suivant, last but not least, the best for last, war. This is what we think of war, right? We don't want war.
War. Yeah. Look, who's in there?
Hillary.
Oh, Hillary. Obama.
Trump.
And
Sanders.
But how come Trump's in there? He's supposed to be fighting the New World Order.
No, he wants to start war with Iran. Apparently. Yeah. So they're all for war.
Oh boy.
Remember, we spoke about it last week that Trump wants war against Iran. Anyhow, that's the pictures of the week posted on our wonderful blog. Now we're going to be going to yeah.
And
what's that, Robert?
No, I thought we had more people because I just added some people in the conspiracy talk. Suggested members. Oh, that's something new.
Yeah,
so we could add people.
Yeah,
but I'm not gonna start adding. I only want people that want to be in it. You know, we're not gonna add people that exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, why bother everybody else? So now, if you wanna see our next show, it's right here, posted right there. You can see us live as usual. So now we're gonna be going to the news because we're getting carried away, right? We don't want to get carried away because.
No, we don't. Please, no, we don't want to get carried away.
We tend to do the right here. Here's the recent news of the week.
Globalist John McCain declares war on Donald Trump and his tens of millions of supporters. Oh boy.
What's the matter there, Robert?
No, I'm just waiting.
Yeah, it's right here. What's up?
Claims deep state disinformation on Russian hacking is more important than actual terror attacks. Fresh off attacking President Trump and his supporters at a globalist security conference in Germany, John McCain is at it again, this time revealing what amounts to be a declaration of war against both Trump and his tens of millions of supporters in a worldwide range of liberal New York magazine. The interview laughs laughably starts with transparent nonsense by claiming the infamous neocon agonizes over taking on a president who literally stands directly against everything McCain has worked for his entire political life. McCain goes on to attack Trump and his supporters in a variety of different ways, including the admit-botched rollout of the travel ban, Tank's Priebus, his speech to the CIA, and supposed views on torture. Keep in mind, Trump has put people in power who have publicly stated that they are against the use of torture. Shockingly, McCain claims that admitted the deep state disinformation concerning the election in Russia is actually more serious than the terror attacks that killed dozens of Americans. So one politician attacking another one.
Yeah, but one of them is a president. Anyhow, I mean, there's always fighting, you know? The KGB, anyhow.
Yeah, it says Russians do use women and sex to go to Russia. It's an old KGB honeypot. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. He wants to destroy the TPP. Well, what's the TPP? Trans-Pacific.
Yes.
Yeah.
Partnership.
But is it standing? Does Trump want that?
He wants to change the United States of America, or so.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what's happening. What's happening? Yeah, I know about what NASA news today about planets.
Exactly. I read it before, but they're inching their ways. When one day they're going to say they found alien life, they're going to say they found beings. I'm just waiting for that. Just waiting for that.
No, they're going to say that God is on that planet, and they're the ones that created us.
What? Yeah.
Right.
The context of the mysterious Vault 7 released. The context of the mysterious Vault 7 tweet from WikiLeaks has been confirmed. Revelations last week dealt a blow to the U.S. after WikiLeaks released CIA documents detailing how French political parties were targeted for infiltrations by the CIA's human electronic spies in the 7 months leading up to France's relations. Okay. Oh boy. Early in the week, Anonymous uncovered a report about the cryptic message of WikiLeaks Vault 7 tweets, speculating only that this was a potentially new release of documents that would potentially shake the world. It was anyone's guess at the time, but WikiLeaks in the release has stated the latest document purge is in context with its forthcoming CIA Vault 7 series. According to the WikiLeaks press release, all major French political parties were targeted for infiltrations by the CIA's human and electronic spies in the 7 months leading up to France's 2012 presidential election. The revelations are contained within 3 CIA task orders published today by WikiLeaks as context for its forthcoming CIA Vault series named specifically as targets of the French Socialist Party. Okay, so what does this say? Is there any good information on this?
But they're just hiding what they normally.
Yeah, it seems that they're sitting around. They're not, you know.
Very, very old. No, I don't think I believe NASA. I don't know. I wouldn't trust NASA.
No, well, no, never. NASA stands for never a straight answer. That's what it stands for.
All right.
Robot probe shows Japan reactor cleanup worse than expected. Ah, yes. So here we are back on that. The robot probe sent to one of Japan's wrecked Fukushima nuclear reactors has suggested worse than anticipated challenges for the plant's ongoing cleanup. The plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, said remote-controlled Scorpion robot was sent into the unit's Reactor 2 containment vessel Thursday to investigate the area around the core that had melted 6 years ago, but is crawling. Function failed while climbing over highly radioactive debris. The robot carrying a dosimeter, thermometer, and 2 small cameras transmitted some data and visuals, but could not locate melted fuel key information to determine how to remove debris of the reactor. The robot was abandoned inside the vessel at a location where it was blocked. It won't block a future probe. Okay, so similar probes are being planned. Okay, so they're gonna send in more probes to see what they can do, but I don't think they can clean up this mess. I think it's beyond that.
You know what's sad there, Robert?
What?
Nobody there talks about this, like CNN and Garbage News, folks, and nobody there's to talk about this, and that's why we always bring it up, because all the other mainstream, well, I would say the mainstream news doesn't dare talk about this. All right. You know, and we dare talk about this stuff, you know, because whenever something like this happens, we must report it right away. Now we're going to be talking about sun.
We generate 1 PB each second. Here's what they taught us about big data. The big data pioneers how to use machines learning to mine gold for your company's data stores.
Sorry, there was a video playing right there. I don't know if you heard anything.
No. CERN's experiments probe the fundamental nature of the universe, create a lot of data, roughly 4 times that held in the U.S. Library of Congress every second. The EU Research Institution has a long history of generating more data each day than most companies do in a lifetime. During its experiments, colliding particles traveling at close to the speed of light. With the bulk of this data is thrown away, CERN shares the remaining information with researchers around the world and has data on the workings of its particle accelerators, the most famous of which is the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, stretching back decades. Manuel Martin Marquez leads data scientists at CERN, talking to Tech Republics now how the past 5 years, Europe's largest particle physics lab has begun employing machines, learning to discover new ways to filter noise in its experiments and to keep its accelerators running smoothly. Oh, it's a big budget that they have to do this.
From the way beginning. See, but they always have money for deals. They don't have money for us, you know?
Okay, but you know what's amazing? Last year I was researching all this stuff into parallel universes and everything, and now I'm interested in other stuff. That's what's good about doing the show, because we get interested in certain things and we learn more and more and more stuff. You know what I mean? And this now back to basics right here. Lawmakers want to ban forced microchip implants markings. Proposal will go further than any other in U.S. to protect privacy. You mean this is actually good news here?
Yeah, they're on our side, but is it really that they're on our side, or someone bigger is going to come and take over? Because there's always a bigger fish that is ready to eat a smaller fish. So how big is this person, these peoples that want to protect us? Now here we go, we're talking about the RFID chip.
Nevada has become the 5th state to pass a law banning the implanting of RFID microchips in humans without their consent. Republican State Becky Harris introduced a bill in the Nevada legislature that would make it a felony to forcibly implant the tracking devices in any human being, including the mentally impaired. Harris said she's worried computer chips could pose serious risks to human rights and public health. This is a completely new issue, Harris said in a statement. I just want safe measures in place until we better understand the technology and the reasoning behind people's desire to require implanting chips. While some critics say that there is no need for such legislation because nobody is being forced to have a chip embedded under their skin, the practice is growing in popularity. Well, yeah, look in Sweden, Belgium, they identified their employees like this, and now and parents are chipping their kids and pets, and nursing homes are chipping with Alzheimer's patients. So it's excuses after excuses. We'll do it for this, for this. The next thing you know, they want to do it, then they'll make it voluntary. And then, of course, we know the Antichrist is going to make it mandatory. And we know how that's going to go.
But it's not just that there, Robert. Apparently, they're going cashless society, so you have the chip and you can pay directly from your phone or wherever you go. It's starting already, or like this one right here. Where did I see it on the hand? I saw somewhere where you could open those with it on the hand. I've seen it somewhere, but if you just, anyways, all these auto news beats will appear underneath in the description once the show has been completed, right?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, right here. You see, you could use your hand instead of a card. You see, right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and people will like it because people are sheep and sheep follow as long as they have the technology. And, you know, I'm not crazy about the technology we have nowadays, but do we have a choice there?
No, not if we want to do the show, right? And get information. Hunt. All right, and now good, interesting article right here. Not the first article. I was about to read the first article.
No, did you? But right here.
Yeah, no, the one above. I was about to read the first one. Yeah, no, the first one above.
First one above. Oh no, don't read that there, Rob. I don't know why they put that.
Hunt. Well, it seems interesting. Hunt for Planet X. NASA breakthrough in search to find mysterious Nibiru. A massive breakthrough has been made in the hunt for hidden doomsday planet Nibiru as NASA made a major announcement.
Now, is this what Liam is talking about in Wichita?
I think he was talking about that they found like a planet, a star system or something with 7 planets. The space agency has asked the public to help locate the mythical planet 9, which is thought to be hidden in our solar system. For years, conspiracies have claimed a giant planet is on a collision course for Earth. The amateur stargazers, UFO hunters, and survivalists believe a prophesied encounter between Earth and a largely heavenly body known as Nibiru or Planet X is coming. And the doomsayers are increasingly certain the collisions or catastrophic near misses will happen in October this year.
Oh, here we go again.
First September, now October.
Mind you, anything can happen, but you know, we're so used to.
But look, it's always around that time. Why though? Remember September 15th, so much stuff. Look at this Nibiru at the White House. Pretty interesting picture.
Yeah, I know. And where's more? We see there's all kinds of stuff, and here we talk about Nancy again.
Repeatedly said there's no evidence Nibiru exists, but now people are being invited to go through data collected by NASA's Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer and locate Planet 9. Researchers group Zoomverse and stargazers will need to shift to lots of false positives, which are not real objects in space. Now look at this. Nostradamus predictions for 2017. Okay, yeah, I don't know if I believe that.
I think that's it. Oh, here, more Nibiru.
And Nibiru, yeah. It just talks about what they're going to see. And the thing is, it says Nostradamus predicted this. How come when I studied Nostradamus back in 94, 95, and they talked about 2017, about Planet X, you know?
Yeah.
Like that part, I don't know. But I believe there is something there. I do believe that there is something there, that's for sure.
Maybe it's coming. Maybe we don't know. Yeah, Planet X, exactly, Liam. Planet X is always here, never left.
I know. Yeah. And the new inhabitable planets they found, but I don't think they found any alien life yet. That's the next thing that they're going to say one day. Okay.
The next one, and when we talk about UFOs, Robert, you know what it means.
I do. Russian soldiers zapped by aliens after Russian soldiers zapped by aliens after shooting down UFO, declassified CIA report claims. Russian military shot down a UFO before they were attacked and killed by the surviving aliens. It is sensationally claimed in a declassified CIA report. I'd love to see this report. Now I'm getting too excited now. The shocking report, which includes claims that 23 soldiers were turned into stone by the aliens in the UFO after they transformed into a ball of light, was buried among thousands of declassified files published by the U.S. intelligence agency. The report in question, created on March 27, 1993, very good year, of course. It's a year that happens on the cup. Anyhow, is a translation by the CIA of a report from the Ukraine newspaper. The newspaper reports that after Mikhail Gorbachev lost power in 1991, many KGB files found their way to the CIA, including an alleged 250-page dossier on the bizarre UFO attacks, which includes pictures and witnesses' testimonies. The report suggested a low-flying saucer has appeared over a military unit in training in Siberia before one of the soldiers fired a surface-to-air missile, bringing it down. Wow. I like this information. Look at that right there. That's by the original document right there. Black eyes. 5 short humanoids with large heads and large black eyes emerged from it. Wow, very interesting. Very effing interesting.
See, we saved the best for last.
Exactly, we sure do.
Oh man, that's it. I wanted more.
Mario, I can't check this out now, but he says there's a chat going on in the YouTube live chat.
Oh, yeah?
Thanks, Lalan. Mario will check it out, I guess, because I've got to continue this. It said 4 humanoids with large heads and large black eyes got out. 2 soldiers are said to have survived, which described how after emerging from the debris, the 5 beings merged into a brilliant white spherical ball of light that buzzed and hissed. So I guess it all came into one. It then exploded, and as it did, 23 soldiers who stood watching were turned to stone, the report claims. The 2 survivors had been in a shaded area, it said. I'd love to talk to these 2 soldiers.
Well, let's get them on the MnRTV Live Show, and you know, we're going to try and find it. Anybody out there that's able to find these gentlemen, let's get them on.
I think they're Russian soldiers, so I don't know if they speak English.
That's true. That's very true.
Hopefully they do speak English and they'll come on the show.
There's more right here. The report sealed. The KGB reports goes on to say the remains of the petrified soldiers were transferred. You see the Rabbi?
I see it. Yeah, I see it. I just people came in. There's a whole bunch of people in the chat room. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I'd love to have this information here. You know, they were turned into stone. And in the Bible, wasn't no, it was
pillar of salt.
Okay, stone. Who was that was turned into stone? Medusa. In the mythical realm, people that looked at it were turned into stone.
Licked in her eyes.
Yeah. And I do believe that Medusa did exist. It's probably a genetic experiment that they did. And imagine she has hair like snakes. Who would want to look at that? Anyhow.
Look at this there, Robert.
According to UFO website ANF YouTube channel Lion's Ground, you have to be careful about what the CIA publishes online, as it could be misinformation. Yes, the CIA does do disinformation also. The CIA also does fake news, and they're probably doing a lot of that now to trying to discredit us. I agree.
All right. Hey there, Diane. Welcome to the show. Hey there, Paula. Anybody else out there that's viewing? You're welcome to view. Anyhow.
And we're very excited to have you guys on, you know, because when you guys come on every week, we look forward to doing the show. And the thing is, as soon as this show's over, I have to work for the next week's show. Okay, so now we're gonna get Trish on, and we're gonna be when we come back, we'll be talking with our special guest Richard Smoley about his many works and his many books.
Yeah, just hold on there, Robert.
Team God, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just hold on there, Robert. Trish is drinking some water. She wants to, her voice to sound clear. She wants her voice to sound very clear.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. So
hold on there, Rabbi. Hold on. She's like she's getting nervous. She's getting a little bit nervous, it happens.
So what a show we've got tonight. I mean, we've got this exciting guest. We've been looking forward all week to be talking with him. And
all right.
We'll be getting him on the MnRTV Live Show around 8:15, but are we ready to go for a break?
Yes, we are there, Robert. And here she is. Here's Trish.
A fascinating series of brief glimpses into the lives of some of the major players and their ideas and beliefs. Taken as a whole, this short work offers the reader an easy-to-understand introduction to traditions and ideas that have informed the world for centuries. Publishers Weekly. I have a standing rule. I read anything Richard Smoley writes. Larry Gossey, M.D. Smoley, is adept at unknotting the paradoxes of spiritual traditions and making new connections across centuries and languages. Library Journal. He is one of the liveliest, most intrepid, and most gifted explorers of the spiritual landscape writing today. Ptolemy Tompkins, author of Paradise Fever with scholarly precision, Smoley revisits Nostradamus, The Da Vinci Code, Atlantis, Freemasonry, A Course in Miracles, New Thought, and many other famed repositories of sacred wisdom. Clear and clear-read, he communicates what his research unearthed in a surprisingly lively style. He speaks honestly to his readers as he recounts, elaborates, and debunks. It makes for an intriguing read as well as excellent reference material. Anna J. Trzaski, retailing inside order here. While the subtitle could imply grandiose theorizing, Smoley has written a commendably modest book. In it, the sacred Vedas of Hinduism meet Western philosophers puzzling out causation, God, the nature of reality, and other questions that have given philosophers and theologians of the East and West something to think about for the past few millennia. This history of thought predates contemporary neuroscience and its exciting discoveries about the relationship between brain and mind. It also reaches across the West-East spiritual divide, monotheistic, personal religion versus impersonal, non-dual religious thought, to look at patterns, associations, and categories that different cultures at different times have used to make sense of the world and the challenges offered by events of the world to human needs for justice and orderliness. This is a serious, almost old-fashioned history of ideas about transcendent and human thought rather than a cheesy comment about how your thoughts can make you rich, beautiful, and successful. Publishers Weekly.
Thank you very much. Much there, Trish. I mean, what would this show be without her?
Yes.
Without you.
I agree with you 100%. And we got quite a show because this guest of ours has written many books, a great researcher, and a whole bunch of information, and it's going to be great. So like I said, if you have any questions for Richard, just put them here, and Mary's going to make sure to give them to me, because we've got an action-packed show, and he'll be coming on in about 5 minutes. So Mary, is there anything you want to tell us we're going to talk about before we get our guest in 5 minutes?
No, I'm very interested to hear what our guest has to say about Atlanteans. What happened, what's his take on Atlanteans. I mean, that's always very interesting if you ask me there, Robert. I mean, Atlanteans always intrigue me. Who were they? Were they really big? And if they had the technology, how come they didn't have the technology to save themselves when they got destroyed,
Diane asked an interesting question, but I think that from what I understand, if God has always existed, how did he become God? I think there is no time. I think in heaven there is no time. I think it's different from here, and I think once we have, because now we're using 2 DNA strands. There's how many? 11 DNA strands.
Oh yeah.
I think God shut us down. We don't understand, but I think once we're full body, then we'll understand everything. Like, Me too. I was asking, but how could somebody always exist if they've never been created? You know, but I think there's probably an answer to this that we simply can't comprehend right now. You know, I mean, at least I can't. Maybe someone has answers, but yeah, God has always existed. How did he become God? I think God it has always been there, because I think maybe there is no time. Maybe it's just always been, always is, always was. I know that's hard to comprehend.
Or my theory is also it's a loop. You know what a loop is? It just goes around and around and around and around. So when it goes around, it has no age, right?
But didn't the loop have to start somewhere?
No, not necessarily.
I mean, it has a beginning. Like it starts, like the loop turns and turns. I don't know. You know, I mean, as far as we know, God's time and our time, 1,000 years, like a day to him. So who knows? You know, all I know is some people have said to me he created himself. Maybe our guest knows. Maybe he has an idea or could answer. That's a good question too. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions. That's why I'm very excited to do this show today. You know. So I can get these answers fulfilled.
Exactly, and yeah, exactly. So he's gonna be coming on in about 2 minutes. We'll be getting him on. So, and look, all the books that he's written. He's written a whole bunch of books, Richard. And this is his latest book, How God Became God.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
it's gonna be pretty interesting. I mean, his website's very good. I looked at it, you know, and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of books and a lot of information here that hopefully he'll be able to answer this question for you, Diane.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to ask.
Well, you could ask God how a person will not tell God how he became God. Well, no, well, you could ask God who created him. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. I mean, we're just inquiring. Oh, maybe once you go on the other side, it doesn't matter. Maybe you have all the answers. Maybe when you get your new body, it's all there and you just know it.
Yeah, because subconsciously, you know, you become enlightened.
Who knows?
You become enlightened. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that we really don't know.
But Lalande thinks the gods evolved naturally in another. Yeah, but they created our, and who created their universe, and who created them, and who created all the universe? That it's like the chicken and the egg type thing. But okay, I'm gonna have to get the guest on.
Yes. I'm ready.
All right,
I'm ready.
Let's get going.
Yeah, I know about Dia. That's very interesting, you know.
Hello.
Hi, Richard.
How are you?
Good, Mr. Richard Smoley. Welcome to the MnRTV Live Show. How are you?
I'm very good.
Good. This is an audio show, by the way.
Oh, all right.
Because I see you there, you know. But this will be on YouTube anyway. So, welcome to.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Welcome to the MnRTV Live Show. My guests are very excited to have you on. So, as a first-time guest, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, your work, and what exactly it is that you do?
Well, I'm a writer and speaker focusing on the esoteric traditions of the world. A lot of them having to do with Western mystical traditions. I've written a number of books about this subject: Hidden Wisdom, A Guide to the Western Inner Traditions, Inner Christianity, Forbidden Faith, The Secret History of Gnosticism, and most recently, How God Became God, What Scholars Are Really Saying About God in the Bible. I also edit a magazine called Quest, which is the Journal of the Theosophical Society in America, and speak here and there and appear on podcasts and radio shows as much as I'm doing that.
That's wonderful. So, can you tell us about how God became God? That's the first question that someone posted up. So I said, okay, I'll ask it right away before we get into other stuff.
Okay. Well, my book, How God Became God, is basically explains something about the history and the literal truth of the Bible. Parts of the Bible are literally true. Parts of them aren't. Scholars have known this for a long time now, but this information hasn't really gotten out to the public. So this is basically a very concise and readable way of just saying, well, what parts of the Bible are literally true and what parts aren't. Now, the how God became God part has a lot to do with how the faith of one people became identified with the universal deity. Now, most religions have, and up to this point still have, this idea of this kind of universal God who's often a bit remote. And then there are kind of more local gods who are the ones who are really going to do anything for you. This was the case in biblical times with ancient Israel. And there was a high god who was known as El. This is usually translated as God in translations of the Bible. And then there was the God of Israel, who was quite possibly originally seen as an angel, who is Yahweh.
Right.
And as time progressed, the Jews ended up saying, well, Yahweh was El. That is to say, our personal, shall we say, parochial God is the universal God. And that forms a backdrop to pretty much all of the religion of Western civilization, because Christianity and Islam came out of that.
Oh wow, that's pretty interesting. So are you saying that some of it could have been made up, like fables, or is there any truth to any of these like different types of religions? Because it had to have been started somewhere.
Well, in terms of the Bible, there are points at which the Bible becomes historical, and there are parts at which it doesn't. And all of the most people, I think, many people would agree that the creation myth in Genesis is not literally true. The flood is an interesting story, although it's a universal one. It probably didn't happen the way it was described. But a lot of the figures in the Bible, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and David, and Solomon, who are very well known, are described in the Bible. But the stories about them have very, very little literal truth, because they were written much, much later. And there's no real historical evidence outside the books of the Bible for just about any of these figures. So that's that's quite a big shock to many people. Islam and Christianity, who are religions that are descended from Judaism, kind of took on the whole biblical narrative at face value, and all of this has led to certain problems.
Wow, that's pretty deep, you know. So, what are your thoughts about end time prophecies? Because many people say when the end times right now, the end of the world is coming. We all gonna get ready, and we're all gonna die. We're gonna go a new world or whatever. It all depends. What are your thoughts on this end of the world scenario?
Well, not so long ago, I came across a website that had a list of all of the years between 1 AD and now, for which someone somewhere, for some reason, predicted the end of the world. And many of the years in the 2,000 years in between were predicted to be the end of the world by somebody or another. And of course, none of these prophecies came true. So I myself do not believe in prophecy. I do not believe that this is any more likely to be the end times and some sort of, colossal end of time than any other time has been. That doesn't mean that there aren't very, very serious problems and issues and upheavals that need to be dealt with. But the idea that this is the time of the end is an idea that keeps resurfacing and resurfacing. And we don't have any real reason to take it seriously at this point. I will point out another thing, though, because there's something else that's going on. Well, if I'm right,
okay,
if there's not much in this, why is the idea so appealing and why does it keep coming? And my idea is this. There's a thing in the psychological terms called displacement. You have a fear that you can't face. It's just too scary to face.
Okay.
So you displace it onto something else that's a little more remote and that's somehow easier to deal with because in a weird sort of way you know it's never going to happen. And I think this is very relevant to these end times prophecies because I'm willing to prophesy with 100% certitude that the world is going to end in a few decades for you and me and everybody else who happens to be listening to this. Because there is such a thing as death and the human body only lasts so long. Now, people do not like to think about their own deaths. It is one of the most unpleasant subjects that most people could dwell on. So they displace their fear of their own death onto this end times, which we all kind of know isn't going to happen. It's certainly not going to be happening in the way that people imagine. And it's a little more comfortable to deal with. Oh, by the way, everybody's also afraid of dying alone.
Yes.
Well, if there's this end times where everybody kind of goes up together, hey, you're not going to die alone. But that doesn't mean that those prophecies are true, and I don't believe any of them are, whether they're in the Bible or any place else.
Okay, I mean, it'd be easier to die all together than all alone in a way. That's one way to see it, you know. I mean, it's less scary saying you're dying tonight, you're all scared. But if everybody dies at the same time, it's like kind of like reassuring, even though it probably won't happen, you know.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Do you believe about Noah's Ark? And what was that about, on the flood? What are your views on Noah's Ark? Was it a fable, a mystery?
It's a fable, but it's a very interesting one. Because of all of the myths worldwide, the myth of the flood is just about universal. It is found in Polynesia, South America, North America, China, Australia, as well as the familiar ones in the Bible. The Greeks and Romans also had a flood myth, more or less like the one in the Bible. So what is going on here? Well, here is one theory that has been advanced. This goes back so far that it may go back to the time when the whole human race lived in Africa, 80 or 100,000 years ago. And then it becomes a little more plausible, because if everybody lived in a fairly small part of the world, yeah, there could well have been a flood that wiped out everybody else, everybody, or almost everybody. And as the human race spread, this myth continued because there were a lot of cataclysms that happened. There were a lot of floods, and the stories of these got assimilated to the original one, whatever happened way back when. And I think Noah's flood is one version of that. Many people have pointed out that there is an ancient Sumerian myth. The Sumerians lived in what is now Iraq around 4,000 years ago. And they had a myth of a story of a hero named Gilgamesh, which had a story of the flood very much like the one in the Bible. So this is a universal motif. Did it happen 5,000 years ago in the way that was literally described? No, that's very unlikely. But there have been a lot of cataclysms, and the human race may well, way back when, have really almost been wiped out by a flood, and all of these other floods kind of got rolled up into it. There's a very famous passage in a dialogue called the Timaeus of Plato, in which this Egyptian priest tells a Greek, "You Greeks are children, because you only know of one flood," because they had a myth like that in the Bible. You're children, you think there's only one flood, but there have been many destructions of the human race by both fire and water. And the Egyptians, they said, had records that went back much further and proved that. So I think there's a core of truth to it, but I think the way it's described is not literally true. And I mean, the story as described in Genesis has real symbolic value, but I don't think it happened in exactly the way it was described in a sort of journalistic sense.
Okay. What do you believe aliens fit into this? Is there such a thing as aliens, or are they ancient gods? Are they ancient astronauts, or are they just something, demons or fallen angels? What are your views on aliens?
Well, it's a subject on which I simply have to say I don't know.
Okay.
And the famous psychologist C.G. Jung, 50 years ago, just about exactly, no, I'm sorry, 60 years ago, wrote a book called Flying Saucers, in which he tried to analyze what all of these things meant, because people were seeing them. And he said, well, one is seeing something, but one doesn't know what. And we're still in that position. I mean, I certainly think that there's a great deal more to the whole UFO thing and the extraterrestrial thing than many would like to believe. But that doesn't mean I know what it is or who these beings are. It is also quite possible that similar beings showed up at other times in the past, and they were taken to be gods or angels or devils, if you like. So I think it's possible. It's not something I would write out entirely, but I've never really seen any evidence or discussion, and I've read a fair amount of UFO literature that would lead me to think that anybody's really figured out the whole thing.
Okay, right, yes. What do you think happened? Do you believe there was a fall of man in Genesis with Adam and Eve that made us the world the way it is now? Because the whole world is screwed up, it's messed up, it seems to be getting worse, you know? I mean, there's certain evils in this world. What do you think?
Well, again, I don't think the fall is literally true in the sense that God got mad at the human race for eating a piece of fruit 6,000 years ago in Armenia. That I do not believe.
Okay.
But in another sense, it's profoundly true. Let me tell you this story. Once upon a time, there was a man and a woman, and they went to God and they said, you know, Lord, we've heard this thing called good. They lived in perfect bliss. And they said, you know, Lord, we heard this thing about this thing called good and evil. And, you know, it sounds kind of interesting. We'd like to find out what it is. And God said to them, that is not a good idea. I do not suggest that you do this. And they said, oh, come on, we want to. And God said, all right, well, in that case, you're going to have to go down to a realm in which you have to work very hard for a living, in which it hurts very much to have babies. And that is the world we live in. Sometimes it seems to be getting better, sometimes it seems to be worse. But it's a statement of the human condition. And I will say this, again, categorically for everyone, for you and myself and everyone who's listening, you have known some good and evil in your lives. To know good and evil, which is eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is to know this thing, and you only know something by experiencing it. So I think in that sense, the Genesis story is profoundly true, although there was not a man and a woman in a garden 6,000 years ago.
Interesting. Now let's get a little bit on the subject, because someone's asking me, what are your views on demons? Do you think it's true that demons exist? They could possess people, and where can possessed people be? Could they be in specialized mental institutions, anything like this? Where can we find these people that are possessed by these so-called entities?
Well, part of this is almost a psychiatric issue, because although I think there is such a thing as possession in the sense that the questioner is talking about, it's not always easy to tell when it is a question of possession and when it's a question of some more ordinary mental disorder. And I'm not even sure the specialists are too good at this. So I think there is such a thing. But I think there's one really important consideration one has to take into account with this. And the more I think about this and the more I hear and read about it, I am willing to say this is true. That 99% of demons that people suffer from are self-created.
Self-created.
That is to say, if you are in a certain kind of imbalanced state, your thoughts can get away with you, and you can even, because thoughts are very powerful if you give them enough energy. That's what magic is all about. But some people do this unconsciously. And then these things that they create, which have a certain amount of energy, and almost, it would seem, a certain independent existence, come to possess them. So I would say, the idea that kind of the spirit comes into a person, yeah, that may well happen. But I think a lot of the demons that people experience, even ones that we would call demons in a literal sense, are self-created, even if they're created unconsciously.
Oh, yeah. And where can these possessed people be? In the institutions?
Well, sometimes you wonder if they're not in charge of major nations.
Yeah, for sure.
That's another subject.
Yeah.
Well, some institutionalized people are probably in that situation. Others, like anything else, there's this whole range of, affliction. Some people can very lightly afflicted, and other people can be like really assailed by these things. I will say I believe this is quite rare. I don't think it's something that happens very often. But I would be very reluctant to say that it does not happen.
Okay. Getting on to a different type of topic. What do you think? Is your information about Atlantis? Was it a real place? Who lived there? Was it technologically advanced civilization? And if they're so technologically advanced, why did they disappear?
Well, of course, that's an interesting subject. Now, I mentioned earlier a dialogue of Plato's called the Timaeus, which talked about all the floods that had destroyed humanity in the past. Well, this was in the context of talking about Atlantis. And the first account of Atlantis is in this dialogue of Plato's, which was written maybe 360 BC. And it describes the flooding of Atlantis, and all of the later stories derive from that. Now, I think there's something in the story, because according to Plato, Atlantis sank in 9600 BC, thereabouts. And that actually fits in what we know even from quite conventional geology, in that was the end of the Ice Age, last Ice Age. And we know that at the end of the last Ice Age, a lot of things that were not underwater suddenly came underwater. And there's no reason to believe that there could not have been some advanced civilization that was flooded. Now, according to Plato, Atlantis was outside in the Atlantic, outside the Straits of Gibraltar. That's where it's described as being. No one has found anything like that, but that doesn't mean there was nothing like that. One very interesting thing that makes you think that Plato's story is not just a fable, because there's one really striking detail in it. It says that Atlantis is the gateway to the continent on the other side of the ocean, which could truly be called a boundless territory. So they had some knowledge that the continents, the Americas, the Western Hemisphere existed. And that suggests to me that Atlantis was a memory of something that happened genuinely, even though we may not know where it was or exactly what happened. Now, technological sophistication is an interesting thing, because when we talk about an advanced civilization, we almost always think about it in technological terms. But there are other civilizations that were advanced that did not care about technology. Their powers and development had to do with the powers of the mind. One civilization like this today, I think you could say, is Tibet, which is, a very primitive culture. But they know things about cognitive science and the workings of the mind that our brilliant psychiatrists haven't yet figured out. So I think Atlantis could well have been a place that had this kind of sophistication. We would not know it from artifacts, because if you had that kind of power, you necessarily need to make any elaborate artifacts. There is another little fact that I think is relevant or interesting in these circumstances, which is among the American Indians, there are legends that there were great civilizations on this continent which destroyed themselves because of warfare between sorcerers. Now, this is not the kind of war we're talking about when we read the newspaper, but I believe such things happened, and I believe something like that could have happened. And all of these things are just little facts I'm putting together, and what I'm saying is very, very speculative. But there's enough evidence from enough different sources that I think it's worth at least contemplating.
Okay, wow. I have a question here. Can you ask your guest what he knows about the Magi religion, aka the three wise men who visited Jesus' birth?
Well, the Magi were initially a tribe, a Chaldean tribe. Chaldea was in what is now northern Mesopotamia, northern Iraq, and they happened to be a particular tribe that was particularly well versed in magic. In fact, they gave the name magic to it. Magic comes from Magi. And they were known for having occult powers. They were probably the first. They were probably the first to develop astrology as we know it. Even though that modern science doesn't consider that scientific anymore. So they obviously were people of great power, and later on they became kind of a caste of magicians. Most scholars would not say that there were any Magi who actually came to Christ's birth, because a lot of, if you ask a New Testament scholar at a university how much of the nativity story is literally true, he will very likely say none. Again, there are symbolic truths in there, and these symbolic truths are maybe even more important than the literal truths. But that is what a scholar would say. Another thing I can throw at you is the star that they supposedly saw is sometimes associated with a grand conjunction. And a grand conjunction is a conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, which occurs every 20 years naturally. And in this one time, in 7 BC, Mars was also conjunct Saturn and Jupiter. These were the outermost planets known at the time. Nobody knew about Uranus and Neptune. So this was considered a major event. And some scholars would say, well, this was the star that was associated with the birth of Christ. And if that's so, then astrologers would have been quite interested in it and would want to see what was going on. But as I say, there are also symbolic truths in it as well.
Okay, this is very interesting. So do you believe that when they followed the star, when the three wise men followed the star, that it was actually a star, or could have been a spaceship, or anything else?
Well, it's basically what I just said. I think, this would have to go back to this conjunction of 3 planets. So it would have been actually 3 planets. A conjunction of planets means that they appear together in the sky. Right. They get very close to each other in the sky. And I suspect that whatever truth there is in the story about the Magi, it probably has something to do with that, rather than being a spaceship. So.
Okay, because I heard some people say it might have been a spaceship or something along the lines. What are your thoughts on who Jesus Christ is and was?
Well, my sons who were very small asked me that once, and I said, well, Jesus was a good man who lived a long time ago. And I'd be willing to say that. There is an enormous amount of dispute. I'm talking about among the most reputable scholars of who Jesus was and what he said and did. There's almost, all these scholars agree on one basic point. There are certain things in the Gospels that probably did go back to Jesus, things he did actually say and do. And there are other things that kind of got added on to him later as legends kind of attach themselves to great personalities. No, there is no agreement among scholars about what part is true, what part isn't. They sort things out largely based on their own preconceptions, which is frankly not very useful. So there's that to say about it. But I'm willing to say this, and this is a thing I talk about in my book, How God Became God, which is not well known. Who did the early Christians think Jesus was? The early Christians, that is, there are a lot of different kinds of early Christians, but I'm talking about the ones who wrote the New Testament. Well, believe it or not, they thought he was the incarnation of an angel. And this angel in those days was known as the great angel, the archangel of many names. And since he had many names, here are some of them. The Son of Man, the Son of God, the Word, the Logos, which is Greek, usually translated as the Word. All of these names were applied to this angel. And Jesus' followers thought he was this man. Like, you know, you come across something in the Bible where the Pharisees would say, do you really say you're the Son of Man? Well, if that meant he was an ordinary human being, what would be so weird about that? But if you're saying, are you really saying you're the incarnation of not only an angel, but the top angel, that would certainly be a lot more shocking. Now, again, whether a lot of this has to do with which verses in the Gospels are authentic and which aren't, and there's no agreement about this. So Jesus could have decided he was decided he was the incarnation of this angel. It may be something that the apostles said about him either during his life and he allowed them to believe it, or something that they started to make up after his life. Those are details we don't know. But I think there's another thing that's worth noticing, and this is often discounted by New Testament scholars. And I think it is very, very reasonable to say that Jesus was believed to be the descendant of King David.
Yes.
Now, was he? Well, I don't know. There are no DNA tests to be done to prove it one way or the other. But it seems very, very clear that he was believed to be in the line of David. And the Jews did have genealogies at that time. This is not just, they could well have just kept records about this, because this stuff was very, very important to them. So I think he was genuinely believed to be descended from King David, and gave him a messianic role, because there are all these things in the Bible that said, the scepter will not depart from David, like forever. So Jesus had this kind of belief, and people could have attached what we would call messianic expectations to him. So I'm willing to go that far and to say that seems to be what the early Christians believe. And if you understand what I just said, the New Testament becomes a lot clearer, because you're no longer wondering, well, what is the Son of Man? What is the Word? As I say, I go into this in much more detail in my book, How God Became God, but this is a capsule summary of what I'm saying.
Going on other subjects, who do you think built the pyramids? Because was it man-made, or was it some extraterrestrial or some civilization? What do you think built the pyramids?
Well, I think they were built by humans. The mystery of the pyramids is that Egyptian civilization around 3000 BC suddenly seems to have grown up out of nowhere. Like suddenly they had this very advanced civilization, and there are many theories about this. Some people say that it was begun by refugees from Atlantis, which may or may not be the case. But I think they were built by humans. I think there are a lot of other questions that aren't asked about them. By the way, I will point out one fact to you that is often overlooked. The Great Pyramid of Egypt, as we have it now, is not the way it was built. What you see now, what I saw when I went to see it 40 years ago, is the core. It was faced with white limestone all around. That is to say, there was just like a surrounding. So the pyramid in 2,000 years ago looked white with this very bright stone. And when the Arabs conquered Egypt, I don't know, 1,000 odd years ago, they stripped this limestone and used it to build a mosque in Cairo. I've actually been to this mosque. It's a fairly common tourist destination. So whenever you're thinking about the pyramids, you have to realize this is not the way they were originally built, particularly the Great Pyramid. Herodotus, the Greek historian who saw this like 450 BC, who saw it and described it as an eyewitness, said that there were a lot of hieroglyphics carved into the limestone that described how it was built. So I think that's an important thing to know. My own hunch about Egypt is that the climate of Egypt changed fairly relatively recently. That is to say, like 4,000, 6,000 BC, it was much wetter. And people were able to live throughout it rather than just kind of clinging onto the banks of the Nile. So if there is this ancient civilization that we don't know anything about, you would have to go out and dig in the desert and find it, and maybe you'd find it and maybe you wouldn't. But I think that could well offer some of the clues to many of the mysteries of the pyramids that people are talking about.
What are your views on hell? Does it exist?
Well, if you believe in an afterlife, so there's three possible views of the afterlife for the most part. One is that there's no such thing. You just die and that's that. The second view is what we would call reincarnation. That is to say, you come back and inhabit another body, a human body, or maybe not, on this earth. And the third possibility is that you go to another realm. Okay, well, if you go to another realm, I guess it's going to be either better or worse than the one we're in now, which is, in a lot of ways, neither particularly good nor particularly bad. So if you go to a better state, that's considered heaven. If you go to a worse state, that's considered hell. Probably one of the most interesting descriptions of hell is found in the writings of a Swedish mystic named Emanuel Swedenborg, who wrote a book called Heaven and Hell. You can get a copy of it without any trouble because he had these visions in which he was taken there. Now, the whole point of it, and I think that the real point about hell is that these states may really exist, but people who go there are self-selecting. They go there because that's where they feel comfortable, because that's the way they are inside. Swedenborg makes one description of hell, a neighbor, it just sounds like a bad neighborhood on earth. There's lots of fighting, it's really shabby, it's really miserable. So people are quite able to make themselves miserable in this life, and I would say they're able to, no doubt, make themselves equally or more miserable in the afterlife. I would tend to view it in this way rather than that they're condemned to hell for eternity. I don't particularly believe it in the existence of hell in that way.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have a question here. One of my guests. What does Richard know about Cain and Abel? Does he believe, does he have a theory on the lost land of Cain? That Cain was, of Nod, that Cain was banished to?
Not really. I mean, because that's part of the Bible that's considered to be more or less legendary. But I will make a couple of points about it. One is that the land of Nod in Hebrew means the land of wandering. So it meant that Cain was just kind of wandered from place to place. There was a tribe called the Kenites, who the Israelites knew, and they probably got their name from Cain. But that would not be quite the same figure that you see in the book of Genesis.
Okay. But so in your view, who wrote the Bible? Was it God's inspired word, or was it something different?
Well, I think it was written at a very high level of spiritual inspiration. But that doesn't make it word for word literally true. There's another little problem here, which I point out again in my book, How God Became God. What we have in the Bible is not the way it was written. There are things that were changed. Sometimes they were changed deliberately. Sometimes things just got left out. So that has to be borne in mind, whenever you think about that issue. I'll tell you one example. In the book of Genesis, there are these three men who are visit Abraham, these mysterious men. And it's quite clear from the narrative that they're angels. And they sort of chat with him. It's about just before the time Sodom is destroyed. And then they leave. And as they're leaving, Abraham says, wait a minute, I have another question. And the original Bible said Yahweh stopped and came back. Now Yahweh is God, although he was just kind of a local God. Some people say he too was originally an angel, which is another long story. But that was changed because the idea that God was a man who would stop and talk to Abraham rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So they changed the text to say, well, Abraham stopped in front of God. Now that's one alteration that we actually know about. There are many others that we don't know about. So it's important to be careful, particularly when you're hanging on the literal meaning of some verse or another, to remember that a lot of this is problematic. Also, if you look at a Bible, I mean, I'm talking about a very reputable edition like the Revised Standard Version, which is generally considered the most authoritative in modern times. You'll see a little footnote after a verse. And you'll see a lot of these little footnotes. And you look down at the footnote and it says, meaning of Hebrew unknown, perhaps means XYZ. So the people who did these translations are not, jokers. These people, have all studied this stuff for their lives. And these scholars can't figure out what the text is saying in many cases. So there are a lot of very obscure things in it. And it's, the point I would chiefly stress is it's not too good to get hung up on particularly your idea of the literal and one's own literal interpretation of the Bible and use it as a club to go around banging people over the head with. But to go back to the original question and the original point, I think it was written for a very high level, a profound level of inspiration. Oh, by the way, it was always known in both Judaism and Christianity, that there are several levels of meaning to Scripture. The literal one was only one, and it was known that the literal truth was not. A lot of this stuff didn't happen literally. They're talking figuratively about higher spiritual realities. So that's another factor that you have to consider, when thinking about the divine inspiration of the Bible.
Okay, so the thing is, what do you think we are now in human history? Do you see the world getting better, worse, or is something cataclysmic going to happen, like Planet X or something along the line, something that's going to destroy society and then it's going to come back in a better form?
Well, that's not a question I can answer for the very simple reason that I already said I didn't particularly believe in prophecies, so I'm not really willing to make one of my own.
Oh.
We do face unprecedented challenges.
Yes.
And some of these are pretty frightening. But then you have to look back and realize every age, every generation has faced unprecedented challenges that are, to them quite frightening as well. So I don't know. I mean, there is the Russian playwright Chekhov, in one of his plays, one of the characters, and this was written around 1900, so it was over 100 years ago. And one of the characters says, I wonder if the world is going to be like 100 years from now. And another character says, well, in the future, people will develop psychic powers. They'll be flying around in flying machines, and there'll be a new fashion in men's suits. But life will be still basically the same as it is now. Hard, full of mysteries, and happy. And that is the most profound and true statement about the future that I've ever read anywhere.
Do you believe that there's like people that are actually controlling the world and maneuvering to enslave us all? What are your views on this?
Well, I think they certainly are.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's fairly obvious. But the real question is this, because you're getting into, are all these people who are working to enslave the human race working together, or are they all working against each other? I would have to say, I believe it's more likely the second, because people just are naturally, they like to fight and they like to disagree. So all of these entities, the Bilderbergers or whatever,
Illuminati,
the Davos people and all that, yeah, in a way they probably are, but in another way, I'm not sure that they are even consistent enough within themselves, to do anything effectively. I mean, a conspiracy of that kind would require a huge amount of coordination. And what we see in human life all along in everything is, somebody tries to coordinate something but it sort of falls apart because there's something they didn't see, or someone else decides they didn't like it and decided to sabotage it. So yeah, I think there are people who definitely want to do that. I'm just saying, I'm not really quite so convinced that it is a global structure organization the way it's sometimes described. But I could be wrong.
Do you think somebody's actually controlling the president? I'm not just talking about President Trump. I'm talking about President Obama, like all the presidents. There's somebody above that they have to answer to that level.
Probably not to that level, but I have a sense from U.S. history that there's only kind of so far they can go without getting, without sabotaging themselves or getting into trouble. And who are these people? Well, basically the bankers, the moneyed interests, whose interests are not exactly the same as that of the public. I think if a president is a reasonably good man, he can try to push things a little bit more in a direction of progress. I think if he's a bad man or a stupid man, he kind of lets these things happen in ways that are not good for the public. So whether they're actually giving him orders, I wouldn't go that far. But I suspect that there are a lot of interests in the shadow that the president had better take account of, or he wouldn't have gotten there in the first place.
So that would include even President Trump.
Say that again?
That would include even President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, at least certainly no better, or quite possibly worse, very likely worse than all the other ones that went before him.
Okay. I have a question here. Does your guest know anything about Scientologists and their teachings?
A bit, yeah, a bit. I'm not a Scientologist myself. I mean, I read a little bit of their literature, and I know one or two people who were Scientologists. Well, I'll explain what they do.
Okay.
Which is not often explained. A lot of what Scientology is involves, I don't know, a galvanic skin response meter, which I think you could probably get for like $39 online somewhere. There's nothing particularly special about it. But this response meter, which you hook up to yourself, I mean, you just put it on your wrist and you have like, put a needle in someone's hand, as far as I know. If you are feeling upset or frightened or shocked, this galvanic meter will respond. There'll be a blip in it, right?
Right.
And Scientologists, I believe, use this. So if you had a Scientological session, you would have this thing, and you would be asked to relive painful memories that you had. And initially, you would see this meter jump, and through whatever procedure they do, as I say, I haven't done it myself, you eventually get to the point where these traumatic events that you're reliving in your mind no longer have the same effect. The meter is kind of flat, and in a way, it can be or seem as if you basically kind of process that. If I understand it correctly, there was a point at which if you did enough of this, there would be no more responses on this meter. And then you would be called a clear, C-L-E-A-R, because you were clear. Now, there's a lot more. There's a lot of mythology about it, and there's something that has to do with somebody coming from the planet Venus 84 million years ago. So there's a lot. It has its own like little mythology and cosmology that I don't know about very much. But I think that what I've just described to you is kind of the basic core practice of Scientology. Some people have tried to take these methods and use them apart. For the Church of Scientology. I don't know much about that, but that's basically what it is. I get the impression they charge quite a lot of money for this procedure, which you may or may not want to spend, but I think that's basically what it's about.
Now, do you see mankind going to like a one world cashless society? Because that's what it seems like. They want to end cash. So by ending cash, they're going to put an implant into us. What are your views on this? Is this where we're heading? Because the technology seems to be indicating this.
Well, I think when viewing world events in this way, you always have to realize that for every it's just as it is in physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So that for all of this, movement toward a one world, there's bound to be a reaction. And of course there is. Donald Trump was elected president on kind of an anti one world view. The British decided to leave the EU. By the way, a year ago, nobody believed either of those things would happen. That was all just considered wildly imaginary, but they happened. In France, you have nationalist movements led, I believe, by Marine Le Pen. I'm sure you read about her. So there are these movements away from this one world thing, and I don't think you can really understand world events or world history without understanding that there are a lot of forces that constantly clash. It's not just like one single wave that goes in one direction and one direction only.
So you're meaning there's all these evil people wanting to do stuff and it doesn't get done because one wants this, one wants that way, so it keeps stalling.
Well, some people say the whole one world thing itself is sinister, but as Socrates said, no one does evil willingly. Everybody does what's good from his own point of view at that time. So, of course, all of the people who, one sees as evil from one's own particular perspective, well, of course, they see you on the other side and they say you is evil. So I wouldn't use the term evil, but I would say that there are always going to be reactions and counter-reactions. There's the movement toward globalization,
yes,
and, which, even a couple of years ago, everyone thought was inevitable. It was all going to go in this direction. And then you have things like Brexit, the election of Trump, and these kind of nationalistic sentiments kind of coming up. And they can't even, I'm not saying these other forces are going to win. I'm saying that these things are kind of clashing, like waves coming from different directions. And, as I said before, I'm not all that enthused about the idea of making predictions about it. If that's any help to you.
Yeah, of course it is. All this technology that we have, like from 50 years ago to now, it's like unbelievable. Internet, cell phones, tablets, computers. Where do you think all this comes from? I mean, it can't just all have come all at once. I mean, hundreds of years ago, we went from 100 years ago, went from the buggy to the spaceship to traveling to planets. Is there something that we get some kind of technology from some people or somewhere?
Well, that's a good question. I would be inclined to answer it from a different perspective, which is you certainly heard about the age of Aquarius.
Yes.
And all of the things that you've described are very much kind of ruled by the sign Aquarius. So when people talk about this is the age of Aquarius, we are already in it. In the 60s, people thought that this was going to, be this happy, blissful kind of Edenic state, but that certainly wasn't. It is another age with its own problems. Oh, by the way, the age of Pisces, which Pisces is a water sign because Pisces means fish. The dominant form of military power was naval power. The British had a navy and they conquered a quarter of the world with it. But in the 20th century, the superiority of air power has been shown.
Yeah.
So the most powerful nations now are those with the most air power. Aquarius is an air sign. So I think a lot of the freewheeling eccentricity that you kind of see in culture today is also an Aquarian phenomenon. And I think the technological innovations are also a result of that. Whether some of these came from extraplanetary sources, it's not something I would know one way or the other. Although, as I'm sure you know, there are people who definitely claim it has.
Yes, definitely. One of my viewers says, "Are we headed towards one universal religion in the distant future, for better or worse?"
Well, I think it's at least possible that rather than, having one kind of blanket religion that everybody is forced into accepting, there does seem to be a trend in which people are beginning to see that there are certain underlying truths among all of the religions. I would say the more enlightened people in society today realize that. And then it becomes much less important, like whether you belong to the right religion, because they're all pointing toward the same thing, as it is to say, well, yeah, I mean, there are some universal truths, and every religion offers its own perspective, its own lens on it. And if we're wise, if we're enlightened, we'll respect the others. And, it doesn't mean you don't have any opinion of your own, but it means you're a lot more humble about other people's opinions and are much more willing to respect them. And if society progresses in a way that I would consider good, we would see more and more of that.
So, like the three major religions: Christianity, Judaism, Muslims, Islam, or whatever you want to call it. Do you see any similarities, and do you think that these were all created by somebody, or it branched off from one religion to everything?
Well, I mean, both Christianity and Islam are grow out of Judaism. And to go back to this, a point that I made earlier, the Jews made a very serious mistake in Old Testament times. They decided that their local God, their personal God of their nation, was the one universal God and there were no others. And this is something they passed on to Christianity and Islam. And this belief, I believe, has been the cause of most religious strife. Now, the Jews have suffered more from it than probably anybody else, which is one of history's ironies. So I think they grew from this. See, the thing about it is, here's the problem with the human condition. There's something you might call the absolute. That's given many names, the thing that out of which everything arose. Now, just because of that, you are never going to be able to conceptualize this absolute, really, because it's much bigger than your own mind. On the other hand, you are bound to try to conceptualize it because you have a mind. And this is all fine, but what happens is people take their own images of God and imagine they're the real thing. This used to be called idolatry. In the old days, people did really think the gods were statues and whatnot, and the Bible makes fun of them. But now, although we're a little more sophisticated, it's the case that we kind of make idols of our ideas of God, and nobody else's ideas of God are correct. And that's where all the fighting comes from. Again, we're never going to have a complete image. And again, we are going to think in terms of our own images, whether we've gotten them from our own reflection and introspection, or whether they've been given to us from the religion that we brought up with. But again, as long as you retain a certain amount of humility about that and realize that there are always other views and there's always further to go, I think you at least avoid the problems of religious bigotry.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people are fighting over all kinds of religion, and it causes wars and it causes everything. In closing, before we end the show, is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers, or if there's any information that you want to get out that I haven't come across, feel free to do so.
No, but I will add one other thing about what you just said. People have always fought.
Yes.
And that's another long topic about why people are so belligerent and aggressive. But there is a base of aggressiveness in human nature. And I have to say that a lot of times religion seems more an excuse today and in the past than the actual cause. So I'll end with that part. The rest is, well, my latest book is How God Became God, which talks a lot about these theological issues. My website is innerchristianity.com, INNER Christianity. I wrote a previous book called Inner Christianity, which was about the more mystical sides of Christianity. So there are plenty of things up on YouTube and whatever people want to watch more about me. But that's about it. I very much appreciate your interest in me, and this has been a delightful conversation.
Thank you very much, Richard. Well, thank you for coming on the MnRTV Live Show. And once the show's up, I'll be emailing you the link so you can put it anywhere you want or whatever it is you want to do. And thank you, and God bless you, and hopefully you'll come on the show again.
Yes, very much so. Well, a good night to you and to all your listeners.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Yeah, that was a great show. I mean, he answered a lot of questions from our viewers. We've learned a lot, and it's just been wonderful. A wonderful guest. And don't forget, you can find his books at Amazon.com and his website. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show tonight. Mario, any final thoughts?
No, that's it for me. I mean, I enjoyed the show. Lots of stuff our guest had to say, and it's like, it's worth us rewatching it over and over again just to grasp what he said. Yeah,
that's what we do, because now we're doing the show. We can't always, have to answer questions and everything and ask questions, but that's what exactly we're going to do. But I guess that's it for this week. We're going to be working on next week's show, because that's what we do, right?
Yeah,
one show to another, and to expose the New World Order and everything in between, like we said before. So we hope you enjoyed the show. God bless you guys, and hopefully you'll come on the show next week.
All right. Have a good one. And remember, share, like, and comment about the show.
Yes,
get it out there.
And remember, without you guys, we'd be talking to ourselves, and sometimes we do, but it's not as fun. So see you guys next week, God willingly. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night. Bye.